Violet Hartley was a force to be reckoned with. As the CEO of Hartley Industries, a multi-million-dollar sustainable tech empire, she exuded confidence and drive. But her journey to the top wasn't a smooth ascent. It was born out of tragedy. At just 27 years old, Violet's world was turned upside down when her parents died in a devastating car accident. The company they had built from the ground up suddenly rested on her shoulders. While mourning their loss, she stepped into the role of CEO, determined to honor their legacy. But her responsibilities didn't end there. Violet also became the primary caregiver to her younger brother, Jordan, a bright, curious 12-year-old who had lost his parents and his sense of security. For Violet, Jordan wasn't just a brother. He was her everything. Every late night at the office, every tough decision she made, she did it for him. Amid her struggles, Spencer Blackwood entered her life like a knight in shining armor. Spencer was everything Violet thought she needed. Charming, confident, and seemingly supportive. He swept her off her feet during a time when her world felt heavy and uncertain. Their whirlwind romance was filled with grand gestures and promises of forever. When he proposed after just 6 months, Violet didn't hesitate. She believed she had found the perfect partner to help her navigate the chaos of her life and the challenges of running a business. But Spencer's polished exterior hid something far darker. The loving husband she thought she had married began to reveal a controlling, manipulative side. First, it was subtle, a comment about her wardrobe before a board meeting, a casual suggestion that she reconsider a business decision. But over time, his behavior grew more insidious. He questioned her every move, both at work and at home. His once thoughtful visits to her office became intrusive check-ins to monitor her activities. Slowly, he began to build alliances within the company, undermining Violet in her own domain. Meetings with the board became strained, and whispers behind her back became the norm. The fairy tale was unraveling. Violet's life, already filled with the pressures of running a company and raising her brother, now carried the added burden of a husband who seemed determined to control her. Yet, through it all, a flicker of strength remained inside her. A quiet resolve to fight back, even if she didn't yet know how. Violet Hartley was no stranger to challenges, and she was about to face one of the biggest battles of her life. Violet's once perfect world began to unravel, and the cracks in her marriage grew wider with each passing day. Spencer, the man who had once seemed like her knight in shining armor, revealed his true colors as manipulative and controlling. It started subtly, with casual suggestions about her decisions at work, comments that might have been harmless if they weren't laced with condescension. Over time, those comments turned into open challenges, as Spencer began questioning her judgment in front of her board members. He wasn't just undermining her authority. He was planting seeds of doubt among the people she depended on most to help run Hartley Industries. It wasn't long before Violet realized Spencer's behavior was far from accidental. Meetings became battlegrounds, with Spencer positioning himself as a voice of reason while subtly framing her as impulsive or misguided. He fostered alliances with key board members, using charm and calculated flattery to erode their trust in Violet. For the first time since inheriting the company, Violet felt like an outsider in her own business. Hartley Industries, the legacy she had worked tirelessly to protect, was turning into a chessboard, and Spencer was making calculated moves to gain control. Then came the discovery that turned Violet's growing unease into outright fear. Late one night, as she pored over financial reports in her office, something didn't add up. Large sums of money were missing, siphoned off into accounts she hadn't approved. First, she thought it must be a mistake, a clerical error or a technical glitch. But as she dug deeper, the truth became undeniable. The money trail led directly to Spencer. The betrayal was staggering. This wasn't just about finances, it was about trust. Spencer had positioned himself as her partner, her ally in navigating the high-stakes world of corporate leadership, but he had been siphoning off her company's assets right under her nose. Violet felt a mix of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. How could the man she had once loved so deeply stoop so low? But when Violet confronted Spencer, she realized just how dangerous he truly was. She waited until they were home, away from the watchful eyes of the office, and laid out the evidence she had uncovered. Spencer's initial reaction was denial. He laughed off her accusations, dismissing them as the product of stress or paranoia. But as Violet pressed him, his demeanor changed. The charm that had once drawn her to him was replaced by something far colder and more menacing. "You think you've caught me?" he sneered, his voice low and dangerous. "Let me remind you of something, Violet. You wouldn't want Jordan to have an accident at school, would you?" Violet froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Spencer's words hung in the air, heavy with implication. He wasn't just threatening her livelihood, he was threatening her family. The one person she loved more than anything in the world, her younger brother Jordan, was now a pawn in Spencer's twisted game. Fear gripped Violet like a vice, but even as she felt the walls closing in, a spark of determination ignited within her. She couldn't let Spencer win. Not when everything she had worked for, and the safety of her brother, was at stake. She knew she couldn't confront him again, not yet. Spencer was too dangerous, too unpredictable. Instead, she needed to be smart. She needed a plan. Quietly, Violet began gathering evidence. She documented every discrepancy in the financial reports, every manipulation, every veiled threat. She knew she couldn't do it alone, so she reached out to the one person she trusted completely outside of her immediate circle, Nolan Reeves. Nolan was a former colleague and a close friend of her late father, someone who had always believed in her and her vision for Hartley Industries. When she explained the situation to him, his reaction was one of immediate concern and quiet resolve. "We'll get through this, Violet," he assured her. "But we have to be careful. Spencer's not just dangerous, he's desperate. And desperate men make mistakes." With Nolan's help, Violet began piecing together a case against Spencer. Late-night meetings in secluded corners of the city, whispered conversations over burner phones, and encrypted emails became their new normal. It was a delicate balancing act, keeping up the facade of a dutiful wife and CEO while working in secret to expose the man who was systematically tearing her life apart. Though fear loomed over her every move, Violet's resolve only grew stronger. She couldn't allow Spencer to continue his reign of manipulation and deceit. Not when the stakes were so high. Her love for Jordan, her commitment to her parents' legacy, and her own sense of self-worth all fueled her determination. Spencer might think he had her trapped, but Violet was no longer the woman who had blindly trusted him. She was ready to fight back, even if it meant risking everything. With her back against the wall and her brother's safety hanging in the balance, Violet knew she had no choice but to act. The stakes were too high, and Spencer's threats had made one thing abundantly clear. He wouldn't stop until he had total control. It was time for her to take the first step in reclaiming her life and protecting her family. That meant ensuring Jordan, her little brother and greatest source of joy, was far out of Spencer's reach. Violet arranged for Jordan to stay with their aunt in California, disguising it as a fun trip to reward him for his hard work at school. "You deserve a break, kiddo," she told him with a smile, hiding the turmoil churning inside her. As Jordan packed his things, excited to visit their aunt, Violet fought back the tears threatening to spill. Sending him away felt like tearing a piece of her heart out, but she knew it was the only way to keep him safe. When she hugged him goodbye at the airport, she whispered, "I love you, Jordan. Always remember that." His innocent, carefree grin was the last thing she needed to see before turning her attention to the battle ahead. With Jordan out of harm's way, Violet threw herself into the plan she and Nolan had crafted. Together, they meticulously combed through financial records, legal documents, and email trails, piecing together an airtight case of embezzlement against Spencer. It wasn't just about the money he had stolen. It was about proving the full extent of his betrayal. Nolan, always the steady and reassuring presence, reminded her to stay focused, even as the enormity of the task threatened to overwhelm her. "You're doing this not just for yourself, but for everyone who depends on you," he said, And Violet, you're stronger than you know. When they finally had everything they needed, Violet made the bold decision to present the evidence directly to the board. Standing in the same room where Spencer had once tried to undermine her authority, Violet spoke with a clarity and confidence she hadn't felt in years. She laid out the facts, her voice unwavering as she detailed Spencer's embezzlement, manipulation, and deceit. The board members, initially skeptical, were soon swayed by the undeniable proof she presented. By the end of the meeting, the tide had turned. The board stood firmly behind Violet, supporting her decision to take legal action against Spencer. But Spencer, ever the manipulator, wasn't going to go down without a fight. He must have sensed that the walls were closing in because, later that evening, he stormed into Violet's office in a fit of rage. The moment she saw him, her instincts screamed danger. His usually polished demeanor was replaced by something unhinged. His eyes wild, his voice cold and venomous. "You think you're smart, don't you, Violet?" he sneered, slamming the door behind him. "But you've underestimated me. You always have." Violet took a steadying breath, her pulse racing, but this time she refused to cower. "It's over, Spencer," she said firmly, meeting his glare head-on. "I have proof of everything. The board knows. The authorities know. You can't manipulate or threaten your way out of this." Spencer's face twisted into a mask of fury. "You think you've won?" he hissed, advancing toward her. "You have no idea what I'm capable of. I built you up, Violet. I can tear you down just as easily." For a moment, the old fear tried to claw its way back, but Violet pushed it aside. "You didn't build me, Spencer. I've fought for everything I have, and I'm not afraid of you anymore." As his threats escalated, Spencer grabbed her arm, his grip bruising. But Violet, fueled by years of pent-up anger and the determination to reclaim her life, fought back. She wrenched herself free, her voice steady even as her heart pounded. "You'll never hurt me again. You'll never hurt Jordan. It's over." At that moment, the door burst open, and security personnel rushed in, having been alerted by the commotion. Spencer tried to resist, but the guards quickly subdued him, escorting him out of the building in handcuffs. As he was dragged away, he spat one last threat at Violet, but for the first time, his words carried no weight. She stood tall, her hands trembling but her resolve unshaken, watching as the man who had controlled her life for so long was finally taken away. The office was eerily quiet in the aftermath, the tension lingering in the air like an aftershock. Violet sank into her chair, her body shaking from the adrenaline, but a profound sense of relief began to wash over her. Spencer's arrest marked the end of his direct influence over her life. A hard-fought victory that had taken every ounce of strength she had. Nolan arrived moments later, his face a mix of worry and pride. "Are you okay?" he asked, kneeling beside her. Violet nodded, her voice steady despite the tears welling in her eyes. "I'm okay. It's over. It's finally over." Nolan placed a reassuring hand on hers, and for the first time in years, Violet allowed herself to feel the full weight of what she had accomplished. She had stood her ground, fought back against the man who had tried to destroy her, and emerged stronger on the other side. This was only the beginning of a new chapter. One where she would rebuild not just her company, but her life. After the storm, the first rays of light began to break through. For Violet, rebuilding wasn't just about putting the pieces of her company back together. It was about creating something stronger, something with a purpose. She poured her heart into Hartley Industries, not only stabilizing its foundation but transforming it into a beacon of sustainable innovation. Under her leadership, the company pivoted toward groundbreaking renewable energy projects, with initiatives designed to reduce carbon emissions and bring clean power to underserved communities. Violet's vision wasn't just about profit. It was about leaving a legacy that her parents would have been proud of. Amid this professional revival came the birth of the Phoenix Project, an idea close to Violet's heart. She knew firsthand how hard it was to start over after escaping abuse, so she created a program to support survivors. The project offered financial aid, job training, counseling, and even housing assistance, everything someone might need to rebuild their life. Violet poured her personal experiences into the initiative, speaking publicly about her struggles for the first time. Her vulnerability inspired countless others, and the program became a lifeline for those in need. For Violet, it wasn't just business, it was a mission. While her career soared, Violet's personal life also began to flourish. Nolan, who had stood by her through every trial, became an anchor of love and stability. First, Violet had hesitated, afraid to trust again after everything Spencer had put her through. But Nolan's quiet patience and unwavering support broke down her walls, showing her what a healthy, loving relationship could be. They grew closer with every passing day, and for the first time in years, Violet felt what it was like to be truly cared for, no strings attached. Their love story unfolded in the quiet moments. Late-night brainstorming sessions over takeout, stolen glances across the office, and tender evenings spent discussing the future. Nolan didn't just see Violet as a successful CEO or a survivor. He saw her for who she truly was, a fiercely compassionate woman with a heart as big as her ambition. Slowly, but surely, Violet began to believe she deserved the happiness Nolan offered. Their partnership became a source of joy and strength, fueling her drive to rebuild her life. Meanwhile, Jordan was thriving in his own right, inspired by his sister's resilience. He had embraced his studies at MIT with the same determination that Violet had shown in her work. Violet couldn't have been prouder. They spoke regularly, trading updates on their lives and cheering each other on. Every time Jordan shared news of a new project or achievement, Violet's heart swelled with pride. She had raised him to be strong and compassionate, and now he was stepping into his own future. For the first time in years, Violet felt like she was striking a balance between her career and her personal life. She managed board meetings and product launches by day and found solace in quiet evenings with Nolan by night. Weekends were spent visiting Jordan, planning the next phase of the Phoenix project, or simply enjoying life, something she hadn't allowed herself to do in far too long. There were still challenges, of course. The weight of her past didn't disappear overnight, and the work of healing was ongoing. But Violet approached each hurdle with a renewed sense of purpose and strength. She had built a life filled with meaning and love, one where she could thrive without fear. One evening, as Violet stood on the balcony of her apartment, watching the city lights twinkle below, Nolan joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You've come so far," he said softly, his voice filled with admiration. Violet leaned back against him, letting the warmth of his presence steady her. "We've come so far," she corrected with a smile. "And this is just the beginning." For Violet, every day felt like a step further from the darkness and closer to the life she had fought so hard to create. Hartley Industries was flourishing, the Phoenix project was changing lives, and her family, Jordan, Nolan, and now herself, was stronger than ever. This was a new chapter, a brighter one, and Violet was ready to embrace it with open arms. Just when Violet thought she had finally put the past behind her, Spencer's shadow loomed once again. From his prison cell, he orchestrated a series of cyberattacks against Hartley Industries, attempting to destabilize the company she had worked so hard to rebuild. Confidential emails were leaked to the press, damaging rumors spread like wildfire, and financial transactions were tampered with, threatening to undermine the company's credibility. Violet had faced many battles in her life, but this one felt like Spencer's final, desperate attempt to destroy what she had created. Refusing to be a victim again, Violet took immediate action. She collaborated with cybersecurity experts and legal authorities to trace the attacks back to their source. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that Spencer had been working through outside accomplices, using his remaining influence to manipulate people on the outside. But Violet was ready this time. With her relentless determination and Nolan's unwavering support, she systematically dismantled Spencer's web of deceit. Within weeks, authorities apprehended those involved, cutting off Spencer's last grasp at power. Just as the dust was beginning to settle, Violet received an unexpected message. Spencer's lawyer was requesting a meeting. Spencer, it seemed, was gravely ill. A terminal illness had taken hold, and with time running out, he had only one request: to see Violet one last time. First, she hesitated. After everything he had done, did he really deserve even a moment more of her time? But deep down, Violet knew that this meeting wasn't about Spencer. It was about her. She had fought so hard to move on, but if she truly wanted to free herself from the last remnants of his hold, she needed to face him one final time. Walking into the hospital room, Violet barely recognized the man before her. Spencer, once confident and calculating, now lay weak and frail. His once piercing blue eyes dulled with exhaustion. His voice, barely above a whisper, carried none of its former arrogance. "You came," he said, almost disbelieving. Violet nodded, keeping her expression neutral. "What do you want, Spencer?" For the first time in their long, bitter history, Spencer's gaze held something unfamiliar: regret. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry," he murmured, his voice laced with sincerity. "For all of it. For the lies, the manipulation, the way I treated you. I spent so much time trying to control you because I was afraid of losing you. And in the end, I lost everything." Violet studied him carefully. She had spent years wishing for this moment, imagining what it would be like to hear him admit his wrongs. But now, standing here, she realized something profound. She no longer needed his apology. She didn't need his remorse to heal, because she had already healed on her own. "I forgive you," Violet said, her voice steady. Spencer's eyes widened in surprise, but before he could mistake her words for weakness, she continued, "Not for your sake, but for mine. I refuse to let my past with you define me anymore. You don't have power over me, Spencer. Not anymore." A tear slipped down Spencer's cheek, though whether it was from relief or regret, Violet would never know. She stayed for only a few more moments before turning to leave. As she stepped out of the room, a weight lifted from her chest. The past no longer held her captive. She was free. Spencer passed away shortly after, and when Violet heard the news, she felt no sadness, no lingering resentment, only peace. Standing on the rooftop of Hartley Industries that evening, she let the cool breeze wash over her, breathing in the scent of a new beginning. She had survived, she had triumphed, and now she could truly move forward. As Nolan joined her, slipping his hand into hers, Violet looked ahead to the future. A future of love, purpose, and a life fully lived on her own terms. The battles were over, and she had won. Now, it was time to embrace everything she had built, everything she had fought for, because for the first time in a long, long time, Violet Hartley was finally, truly free. 5 years later, Violet Hartley stood on the rooftop of Hartley Industries, watching the city lights twinkle like stars scattered across the horizon. The same skyline that had once felt like a prison now represented everything she had built. Her resilience, her triumph, her legacy. The woman she had become was nothing like the one who had once cowered under Spencer's control. She was strong, fearless, and finally at peace. Her life was full now in ways she had never imagined. She was happily married to Nolan, whose unwavering support had been her rock through the darkest times. Their 2 children, Lucas and their newborn daughter, Amelia, filled their home with laughter and warmth. Jordan, once the little boy she had fought so hard to protect, had grown into a brilliant environmental engineer, using his knowledge to make the world a better place, just like their parents had always dreamed. Hartley Industries had flourished under her leadership, evolving into a global leader in sustainable technology and corporate social responsibility. The Phoenix Project, once just an idea born from her pain, had grown into a movement, providing thousands of abuse survivors with resources to rebuild their lives. Women who once felt trapped now had a way out, a path forward, just as Violet had found hers. But her greatest victory wasn't in the success of her company or the recognition she had earned. It was in the life she had built. A life free from fear. a life where she had reclaimed her power, her happiness, and her future. One evening, as Violet tucked Lucas into bed, he looked up at her with his big, curious eyes. "Mommy, tell me the butterfly story again," he said sleepily. Smiling, Violet began. "Once upon a time, there was a caterpillar who thought she would never be anything more than what she was." As she recounted the tale of transformation and resilience, she felt the weight of her journey settle into something beautiful. She had lived it, survived it, and now she was passing on the lesson, not just to her children, but to the world. As she kissed Lucas goodnight and stepped into the quiet hallway, Nolan was waiting for her, watching with that same admiration that had never faded. "You know," he said softly, wrapping an arm around her, "you don't just tell that story. You are that story." Violet smiled, leaning into him. He was right. The girl who had once been trapped in fear had emerged stronger than ever. She was living proof that even the darkest past could give birth to the brightest future. And as she looked ahead, she knew that this was only the beginning. She had not just survived, she had triumphed. And the legacy she was leaving behind would ensure that others could do the same. If you enjoyed this heartfelt story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more amazing tales. Your support keeps us going.